Nalaya Ezenwaka stood barefoot on marble that cost more than her childhood home, wearing a white dress she'd chosen in under 10 minutes, and wondered if survival always felt this much like surrender. The penthouse stretched before her like a fortress disguised as luxury, sandalwood and leather mingling with the metallic scent of expensive technology. Floor-to-ceiling bulletproof windows framed Seoul's glittering skyline 63 floors below, while hidden security systems hummed in the walls like a mechanical heartbeat. Everything here was designed to keep threats out, or keep her in. Her fingers drifted to the tide-shaped birthmark on her collarbone, the unusual pattern of darker skin that resembled ocean waves. This mark, this small, meaningless detail she'd carried her entire life, had somehow made Korea's most feared CEO propose marriage to a woman he barely knew. The wedding that morning had been a legal formality. No guests, no celebration, just lawyers with expressionless faces and documents that bound her life to a stranger's. Ji Seon-woo had signed his name with the same cold efficiency he probably used to destroy competitors, then handed her a pen without meeting her eyes. 3 days ago, her mind whispered, subway platform, hands shoving you toward the tracks, then a stranger's iron grip yanking you back. You never saw his face. 2 days ago, your dorm room door kicked open at 2 a.m., chloroform cloth covering your mouth, then waking to find your attacker unconscious on your floor, a pool of blood spreading beneath his head, no savior in sight, just you and a body you didn't remember fighting. Someone had been protecting her, someone who moved like a ghost, who saved her without being seen. She knew who. The penthouse door opened with a soft pneumatic hiss. Seon-woo entered, still wearing the black suit from their signing, moving with the predatory grace of something dangerous pretending to be civilized. He stopped 6 feet away, maintaining careful distance. For one unguarded second, his legendary composure cracked. His dark eyes traced her face with something close to reverence. Then hunger, then carefully rebuilt walls slamming back into place. The ice serpent of Seoul, they called him. Brilliant, feared, impossible to read. But Nalaya had spent her life reading what others missed. He didn't approach, just stood there, watching her like she was something precious and dangerous in equal measure. You've been following me, Nalaya said quietly, her Nigerian accent softening the hard consonants. You saved me twice, and now you've married me. So tell me, Ji Seon-woo, am I your wife or your prisoner? If you're hooked already, smash that like button and subscribe, because what Seon-woo reveals next will change everything. Comment below where you're watching from, and trust me, this story is about to be absolutely explosive. Seon-woo didn't answer immediately. Instead, he moved to a hidden bar that materialized from the wall with a touch of his fingers. Technology and luxury seamlessly merged. He poured amber liquid into 2 crystal glasses, and Nalaya noticed his hands, steady as a surgeon's, bore faded scars across the knuckles. He handed her a glass. Korean soju. The gesture felt almost normal. Both, he finally said, his voice carrying that careful control that made him famous in boardrooms. Neither. I don't know anymore. The admission hung between them. The famous ice serpent sounded lost. He sat across from her, maintaining distance, and the city lights behind him created a halo that made him look almost otherworldly. 3 weeks ago, I received my brother's final research. He died 5 years ago, or that's what I was told. But his files were hidden, encrypted, set to release only if certain conditions were met. Seon-woo's jaw tightened. Inside was a photograph of a little girl with a tide-shaped birthmark. Your name, your father's name, Chukwuma Ezenwaka, and a message. She is the key. Protect her at all costs. Nalaya's breath caught. Her father, the marine engineer who'd disappeared when she was 10, whose death had never made sense, whose ghost had haunted her mother into permanent anxiety. Shock morphed into anger, hot and defensive. So you brought me here? The fellowship was fake? No. His response was immediate, almost gentle. The fellowship was real. You earned it with your pattern recognition research and language aptitude. Your work on tidal prediction algorithms was brilliant, but I expedited the process, made sure Hanul Group's name appeared on your acceptance letter. He leaned forward slightly, urgency creeping into his controlled demeanor. And when the assassination attempts started the moment you landed in Seoul, I knew they'd found you too. They? Nalaya's scientist mind catalogued information, searching for patterns. Who are they? Who? The same people who killed your father and my brother during Project Tidebreaker 20 years ago. Seon-woo's voice turned cold, deadly. A classified technological breakthrough that powerful people wanted buried with its creators. Energy corporations, government officials, members of my own board who've been sabotaging me for years. Nalaya stood abruptly, pacing across the expensive marble, her bare feet silent. Her brilliant mind worked through the implications. The Hanul Group logo was on my father's classified documents. I found them hidden in my mother's things. Your company killed him. Pain, genuine, raw pain, flashed across Seon-woo's face, cracking his mask further. My father's company. I was 14 when it happened. Just a boy who knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it, couldn't stop it. He set down his glass with controlled precision. I've spent 20 years taking control away from the people responsible, removing them from power piece by piece. But they're still on my board, still influential, still hunting anyone connected to that project, including you. Nalaya's anger wavered. She noticed the scars on his knuckles again, the slight stiffness in how he moved his left shoulder. Evidence of violence survived. They tried to kill you too. 6 months ago, a car bomb that should have worked. His smile was bitter, humourless. I survived, but I learned they knew you existed, that you'd been accepted to programs worldwide, that it was only a matter of time before you came looking for answers about your father. He stood now, still maintaining distance, but his intensity filled the space between them. Marriage was the only legal shield strong enough. As my wife, you become untouchable. My resources become yours. My security, my lawyers, my power, all of it protects you. My enemies can't reach you without declaring war on me, and I've made myself too powerful to attack directly. Nalaya's anger softened into something more complex, understanding mixed with reluctant respect. You married me to save my life. Seon-woo's carefully constructed walls crumbled just a fraction more. His voice dropped, vulnerable in a way that seemed to surprise even him. At first, that was the plan. Cold, strategic, necessary. He met her eyes fully for the first time since entering. Now, I'm not sure that's the only reason anymore. The admission hung between them, charged and dangerous. The air felt thick, electric with unspoken possibilities. Nalaya should be afraid, trapped in a stranger's fortress, married to a man with enemies powerful enough to kill, her life no longer her own. But fear had never been her dominant emotion. Curiosity was, determination was. Show me the research, she said, her voice steady. Show me what my father died for. Seon-woo studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he found made him nod slowly. Follow me. He led her through corridors that whispered of wealth and paranoia, more security panels, biometric scanners, cameras tracking their movement. They stopped before a reinforced door that looked like it belonged in a bank vault. No one enters this room, Seon-woo said quietly. Not my assistants, not my security team. Only me. He pressed his palm to the scanner, then typed a code. Until now. The door opened with a pneumatic hiss. Inside was a study that felt frozen in time, 2 desks positioned side by side, walls covered in whiteboards still bearing faded equations, shelves lined with research journals. The space felt sacred, like a shrine to the dead. Seon-woo approached a wall safe, and Nalaya's breath caught audibly. Engraved on the steel surface in careful Hangul and English were 2 names. Chukwuma Ezenwakan Ji Tai-hyun. Her father's name, preserved, honoured. Inside the safe lay treasures she'd thought lost forever. Leather journals filled with her father's distinctive handwriting, technical blueprints marked with coffee stains and marginal notes, photographs of 2 men laughing together in a laboratory, arms around each other's shoulders. Her father, younger than she remembered, his smile unguarded. and a man who looked like Seon Woo but softer, warmer, his brother, friends before they were victims. Project Tidebreaker. Seon Woo's voice was reverent as he carefully laid documents on the desk. Everyone thought it was just advanced tidal energy research. It wasn't. Your father and my brother discovered a way to harness tidal gravitational forces at the molecular level, completely clean, infinitely renewable, so efficient it would have made fossil fuels obsolete overnight. Nalaya's scientist mind raced through the implications. The energy corporations would have lost trillions. Oil, natural gas, coal, entire industries facing extinction. Seon Woo's jaw clenched. They were going to present their findings to the United Nations. 2 weeks before the summit, both were killed in what officials called unrelated accidents. Nalaya reached for her father's journal with trembling hands. The leather was worn smooth where his fingers had gripped it. She opened to a random page and saw his handwriting. Those familiar loops and crosses that used to appear on her school papers, on birthday cards, on sticky notes reminding her mother to take her medicine. Nalaya turned 10 today, sang her happy birthday over video call. She's so smart, so curious. If anything happens to me, I hope she'll understand I did this for her future, for everyone's future. The entry was dated 3 days before he died. The grief she'd buried for 15 years erupted like a dam breaking. Her hands shook violently, but she refused to cry. Crying felt like surrender, and she'd already surrendered enough today. Nalaya. Seon Woo's voice was closer now. Then he did something unexpected. He crossed the distance between them, and gently, carefully took her trembling hands in his. The first real touch since signing their marriage certificate. The contact was electric. His hands were warm, calloused from more than signing documents, and they steadied her shaking like an anchor in a storm. His thumb traced her pulse point, and she knew he could feel her heartbeat racing. "You're not alone anymore," he whispered, and the ice serpent's mask shattered completely. Vulnerability flooded his features, raw, desperate, real. "I've been alone in this fight for so long, but now you're here, and I—" He stopped himself, but his eyes said everything his mouth wouldn't. Nalaya could pull away. Should pull away. Instead, she stepped closer. "Finish what they started," she said firmly. "Together." Their faces were inches apart now, breath mingling, the air thick with possibility and promise. His eyes dropped to her lips, then back up, asking silent permission. His phone erupted with a shrill alarm that shattered the moment. Security breach. The words flashed red across his screen. Seon Woo's expression transformed instantly. Protective, dangerous, lethal. "They know you're here," he said, already moving. "And they're coming tonight." The penthouse transformed before Nalaya's eyes. Steel shutters slammed down over the bulletproof windows with mechanical precision, turning the glass fortress into a sealed bunker. Hidden panels in the walls slid open, revealing weapons compartments, guns, tactical gear, equipment that looked military-grade. The sophisticated living space became something else entirely, a war room. Seon Woo moved with practiced efficiency, his fingers flying across a tablet. "Security team, position Alpha. No one gets past the 58th floor." Within 90 seconds, 6 operatives in tactical gear materialized in the penthouse. They moved like shadows, taking positions, checking weapons, eyes constantly scanning. Professional. Lethal. But Seon Woo trusted no one completely. He kept Nalaya at his side, one hand wrapped protectively around her wrist. "The hack's escalating," he said, eyes locked on multiple screens now displaying cascading code. "They're not just after data, they're trying to override building security, unlock elevator access, disable defense systems, open doors." His fingers danced across keyboards, building firewalls, redirecting attacks, fighting a digital war at impossible speed. Nalaya watched his genius on full display, the cold, calculating brilliance that had made him Korea's most feared CEO. "Let me help." Her voice cut through his concentration. He glanced at her, surprised. "You don't—" "I have a PhD in pattern recognition and computational analysis," she interrupted. My thesis was on predicting chaotic systems. Hacking patterns are just chaos with intent. Something shifted in his expression. Respect. He pulled up a secondary terminal. Here, track the intrusion vectors. Nalaya's mind came alive. She saw what he couldn't. The rhythm beneath the chaos, the repeated sequences hidden in seemingly random attacks. There, she pointed. They're using a three-pronged approach, but the primary attack is camouflaged as secondary noise. Focus your countermeasures here. Their shoulders touched as they worked, bodies aligned, minds synchronized. His hand steadied hers on the mouse when she isolated a particularly complex algorithm. Stolen glances when code compiled, the intimacy of shared purpose, more intense than any physical touch. Got it, Sion-woo breathed, tracing the source now. The screen revealed coordinates: Hanel Group Headquarters, Floor 42, Executive Boardroom. Sion-woo's expression turned glacial. Park Dong-hyun. The name dripped with controlled fury. My CFO. I've worked with him for 8 years. Someone you trusted. Nalaya understood betrayal intimately. Someone who's been reporting to my father's old associates. His voice was cold, controlled, terrifying in its calmness. Someone who dies tonight. Sion-woo. I don't mean literally. He met her eyes. I mean his career, his reputation, everything he's built. I'll destroy him legally, publicly, completely. The hack stopped as suddenly as it started. Blocked, traced, failed. Sion-woo dismissed his security team with curt instructions, and they vanished as silently as they'd appeared. The steel shutters remained down. The fortress stayed sealed. Silence settled over the penthouse, broken only by their breathing, still elevated from adrenaline, from proximity, from everything unsaid. The only way to truly end this, Sion-woo said quietly, is to finish Project Tidebreaker and go public. Expose everyone involved in the cover-up, board members, government officials, energy executives, all of them. He turned to face her fully. But doing so will paint an even bigger target on both our backs. They'll come harder, more viciously. They'll use everything. Your mother, my company, legal warfare, public smear campaigns. Maybe even open assassination. Nalaya thought of her father's journal, his hope for her future. She thought of Sion-woo's brother's final message, protect her at all costs. Then we finish it, she said with quiet conviction. My father didn't die so his work could stay buried. Neither did your brother. The crisis had passed, but something remained, the electric tension that had been building since he'd taken her trembling hands. They stood close in the dim light of his study, alone again. Sion-woo's carefully constructed distance was gone. He looked at her like she was oxygen, like she was the answer to a question he'd been asking his entire life. You should rest, he said, but didn't move away. So should you, she replied, stepping closer. He raised his hand to her face, fingers trembling again, and traced her jawline with devastating gentleness. Nalaya. Her name on his lips sounded like a prayer, but he pulled back, honor warring with desire visible in his eyes. Not like this. Not when you're still processing everything. His voice was rough, strained. When I touch you, really touch you, I want you to be certain. Dawn broke over Seoul in shades of gold and pink, light filtering through the steel shutters in thin, determined lines. Nalaya woke in the guest room where Sion-woo had insisted she sleep, despite the chemistry that had crackled between them like live wire. The bed was too large, too empty, and she'd spent half the night replaying the feeling of his fingers on her jaw, the way he'd said her name like a prayer. She found him in his study, still dressed in yesterday's clothes, surrounded by open journals and glowing screens. He hadn't slept. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his normally immaculate hair dishevelled from running his hands through it. But coffee waited on the desk beside an empty chair. Cream, no sugar. He'd remembered. You should have rested, Nalaya said softly. Sion-woo looked up, and something in his exhausted face softened completely when he saw her. I couldn't. Not when we're this close. She sat beside him, close enough that their arms touched. He leaned into her presence immediately, unconsciously, like a man starved for touch-seeking warmth. The gesture was so vulnerable, so unlike the ice serpent of soul, that her heart constricted. "Show me what you found." His fingers moved across the keyboard, pulling up scanned pages from his brother's notes. They didn't just hide the research. They built a working prototype, small enough to transport, powerful enough to demonstrate the technology's viability. Nalaya's pulse quickened. "Where?" "That's the problem. The location is encrypted." He gestured to a complex series of numbers and symbols that seemed random, chaotic. "I've tried every decryption algorithm I have. Nothing works." She studied the sequence, her pattern recognition instincts awakening. The chaos was unrandom. It was designed to look random to anyone who didn't know what to search for. "This isn't a standard encryption. It's personal." Her mind raced, seeing connections invisible to others. The numbers corresponded to tidal patterns. The symbols matched constellations her father had taught her to identify as a child. And the sequence itself. "Its coordinates," she breathed. "Encoded in tidal cycles and astronomical references, only someone with knowledge of both fields would recognize." Her fingers flew across the keyboard, translating the code with intuitive speed that made Sion-woo stare. Within minutes, the answer emerged. Latitude and longitude pointing to Nigeria. Specifically, to her childhood home on the coast. To the tidal cave system beneath her father, his old workshop where she'd played as a little girl, where he'd taught her to read the ocean like scripture. "They hid it where only I could find it," she whispered. Sion-woo's hand found hers, squeezed gently. "Your father planned for this. If anything happened to him, he made sure the prototype would wait for you." The implications crashed over them both. They had to go to Nigeria, retrieve the prototype, and go public before the board could strike again. But leaving his fortress meant maximum vulnerability. Travelling together, exposed, with enemies who'd already proven they'd kill to keep this secret buried. "I can't lose you." Sion-woo's voice cracked with raw emotion. "I've spent years planning revenge, building power, preparing for this moment. But now that you're here, all I can think about is keeping you safe. Even if it means never finishing this. Even if it means letting them win." Nalaya turned to face him fully. She reached up and took his face in her hands, bold, decisive, making him look directly at her. "I didn't survive 2 assassination attempts and marry a stranger to hide," she said firmly. "We finish this, together, and then..." His voice was rough, desperately hopeful. "And then we figure out if this marriage is just survival, or if it's something real." Something broke in him. He surged forward and captured her lips in a kiss that had been building since the moment they met. Since he'd first seen her tide-shaped birthmark and known she was the answer to his brother's final message. The kiss was desperate, hungry, but achingly tender. He kissed her like she was the answer to every question he'd been too afraid to ask, like she was light after years of darkness, like she was everything. When they broke apart, both breathless, he pressed his forehead to hers. Their breath mingled in the small space between them. "It's real," he whispered. "For me, it's already real." They'd leave for Nigeria in 48 hours, but tonight they'd stop pretending distance kept them safe. Evening fell over Seoul like a silk curtain, and Seon-woo dismissed all staff, setting security protocols to maximum. The penthouse became theirs alone, a sanctuary before the storm. He cooked dinner himself, a clumsy but thoughtful fusion of Korean and Nigerian dishes. Jollof rice alongside kimchi, bulgogi with suya spices. The food was imperfect, but the effort behind it made Nalaya's throat tight with emotion. They ate by candlelight, conversation flowing like wine. Childhood stories, his lonely existence as a corporate heir, her sun-soaked days on Nigerian beaches. Dreams they'd shelved, fears they'd never voiced, laughter that felt like medicine. The walls between them crumbled completely. "Can I hold your hand?" he asked, reaching across the table. She gave it to him, marveling at how this man, feared across Asia, powerful enough to destroy empires, asked permission for every touch like she was something sacred. "Can I kiss you here?" His lips brushed her wrist, her pulse point. "Yes," she breathed. He led her to the master bedroom, not the guest room. But the urgency from that morning's kiss had transformed into something reverent, worshipful. He undressed her slowly, trembling hands learning her skin, pressing kisses to her shoulders, her collarbone, the tide-shaped birthmark he'd searched for across years. "You're beautiful," he murmured in Korean, then English, as if one language couldn't contain what he felt. So beautiful. When he finally touched her, truly touched her, skin to skin, hearts hammering in synchronized rhythm, he gasped against her neck, his voice broken with wonder. You feel like heaven." Nalaya was untouched, nervous, but she trusted him completely. He took his time, worshipped her with hands and lips and whispered devotion. He murmured how long he'd wanted this, how she'd changed everything, how he'd been cold for so long until she brought warmth back into his life. The intimacy was passionate but tender, overwhelming but safe, the consummation of not just physical attraction but deep emotional connection forged in crisis and choice. Afterward, wrapped in silk sheets and each other, both transformed, he held her against his chest. She could feel his heartbeat strong and steady. "I love you," he said simply, like it was the truest thing he'd ever known. "I love you too," she replied, meaning it with every fibre of her being. For 3 perfect hours they existed in their own world, safe, together, whole. Then, at 3 a.m., alarms screamed. The explosion hit the 58th floor, shaking the entire building. Not a digital hack this time, physical assault, brutal and direct. Seon-woo moved with trained precision, grabbing weapons from hidden compartments, pulling on tactical gear. "Stay behind me!" But the penthouse doors blew inward. Armed mercenaries in black tactical gear flooded in, moving with military efficiency. Too many, too prepared. "Panic room!" Seon-woo shoved Nalaya toward the reinforced safe room. "Now!" "I'm not leaving you." His security team materialized, engaging the mercenaries in brutal close-quarters combat. Gunfire, shouting, chaos. Strong hands grabbed Nalaya, one of Seon-woo's own guards, dragging her towards safety despite her struggles. She watched over her shoulder as Seon-woo fought like something unleashed, taking down attackers with lethal grace. The panic room door sealed with a hydraulic hiss. Bulletproof glass separated her from the battle. She could see everything but do nothing. Seon-woo fought brilliantly, but they kept coming. 1 mercenary, 2, 5, 10. Overwhelming force. She watched him take a hit to the ribs, another to his shoulder. He stumbled but kept fighting, kept positioning himself between the mercenaries and her panic room, protecting her even as he fell. A rifle butt to his temple. He dropped. "No!" Nalaya screamed, pounding on the bulletproof glass. "No, no, no!" The mercenaries swarmed him, zip-tied his wrists, dragged his unconscious body toward the blown-open doors. Through the chaos, one mercenary turned and looked directly at her through the glass. He smiled, cold, victorious, and drew a finger across his throat. A promise. Then they were gone, taking Seon-woo with them, leaving only bodies and destruction and the sound of Nalaya's screams echoing in her sealed sanctuary that had become a cage. "Stay in the panic room," Seon-woo's head of security commanded through the intercom. "Backup is 10 minutes out." 10 minutes. Nalaya stared at the security monitors showing different angles of the penthouse. Shattered glass, bodies of guards, bloodstains on marble. Empty. They'd taken him. Another camera showed the underground garage. Mercenaries dragging Seon-woo's unconscious body toward a black van, blood trailing from his temple, his hands zip-tied behind his back. "No!" The word tore from her throat. "Not again. I won't lose someone else." Her father had been taken from her. She'd been powerless then, a 10-year-old girl who could only watch her mother fall apart. But she wasn't powerless anymore. Nalaya's eyes locked on the panic room's control panel. Complex security code, designed to be unbreakable from inside. But her pattern recognition mind saw what others couldn't, the algorithm's rhythm, the mathematical sequence hidden in apparent randomness. 30 seconds. The door hissed open. She grabbed the weapon from the fallen guard just outside, checked the magazine like her father had taught her during those long-ago lessons on the beach. "Just in case, Nalaya Bear," he'd said. "Just in case." This was the case. She moved through the penthouse like a ghost, using intelligence over strength. The mercenaries had left a rear guard, 2 men stationed at the stairwell. They expected terrified compliance, not calculated vengeance. Nalaya used shadows and silence, reaching the emergency stairwell unseen. Her bare feet made no sound on concrete as she descended 63 floors, following the trail they'd left. The underground garage reeked of gasoline and burnt rubber. The black van idled near the exit ramp, its back doors open. Mercenaries were loading Seon-woo inside, his body limp, face pale. She didn't hesitate. The warning shot ricocheted off the concrete ceiling, loud, shocking, strategic. The mercenaries spun toward her, reaching for weapons. She fired again, sent a mass on the nearest target, then the second. Both dropped. "The wife!" someone shouted in Korean. But she was already moving, using vehicles as cover, her mind calculating angles and trajectories like the scientist she was. Another shot, another mercenary down. Then a voice cut through the chaos, cold, cultured, familiar from board meetings she'd watched on video. "Nalaya Izanwaka." Park Dong-hyun stepped into view, gun pointed casually at Seon-woo's head. The CFO who'd worked beside her husband for 8 years, the traitor. "Your father should have stayed quiet, made his life so much easier. Now you'll both disappear like he did." "My father didn't raise a victim," Nalaya said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "And my husband didn't marry one either." She fired, not at Park but at the van's front tires. The vehicle lurched as rubber exploded, then the back tires. The van collapsed onto its rims, useless. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. Police. Back up. Finally. Park's face contorted with rage. He barked orders, and the remaining mercenaries scrambled toward escape vehicles, abandoning the disabled van. Abandoning Seon-woo. Park aimed at her one final time, but she was faster. Her shot caught his shoulder. He fell, screaming as his men dragged him toward a motorcycle. Then they were gone, roaring up the exit ramp as police vehicles poured in from the opposite entrance. Nalaya dropped the gun and ran to the van. Seon-woo lay crumpled in the back, blood matting his hair, bruises darkening his jaw. But his chest rose and fell, breathing, alive. "Seon-woo!" She cradled his head in her lap, tears finally falling. Please wake up." His eyes fluttered open, unfocused but finding her face. "Heaven." His voice was barely a whisper. "You came back. Always," she promised, pressing her lips to his forehead. "Always." Hospital, surgery, 72 hours of uncertainty. But he survived. When he truly woke, no longer sedated, no longer drifting, she was there, holding his hand like she'd promised. He looked at her with such fierce pride it stole her breath. "My fierce wife, I knew you were extraordinary." She kissed him softly, tasting salt and relief. "We finish this. Together. No more running." "Together," he agreed, squeezing her hand. "Always." 2 weeks later, they stood on Nigerian soil. Seon-woo still moved carefully, healing ribs protesting sudden movements, but he'd refused to wait any longer. "We finish this now," he'd said, and she'd loved him even more for his stubborn determination. Nalaya's mother wept when she saw them, happy tears this time, not the grief-stricken ones that had defined her for 15 years. She embraced Nalaya, then shocked Seon-woo by pulling him into a tight hug as well. "He looks at you the way your father looked at me," her mother whispered to Nalaya later, watching Seon-woo help prepare dinner despite his injuries. "Like you're his whole world." The next morning, they descended into the tidal caves beneath her father's old workshop. The entrance was hidden behind rusted equipment, accessible only during low tide, just as her father had designed. Seon-woo held her hand through the darkness, trusting her to navigate the slippery rocks and narrow passages. She led them deeper, following childhood memories and her father's encoded instructions. The cave opened into a chamber that time had forgotten. In the centre, protected by waterproof casing, sat the prototype, compact, elegant, revolutionary. Her father's final notes were sealed in plastic beside it. Nalaya opened them with trembling hands, his handwriting blurred through her tears. For my daughter, change the world, love fearlessly, live free, you were always braver than you knew. Your father, who loves you beyond measure. She broke down completely. Seon-woo held her in the darkness, his own tears falling silent. They emerged from the caves into bright afternoon sun, the prototype secured in a protective case. Park Dong-hyun and 3 remaining board members waited on the beach, guns drawn. One final desperate play. You should have died in Seoul, Park snarled, his shoulder bandaged from Nalaya's bullet. You should have learned that we don't die easily, Seon-woo replied calmly. Then Nigerian federal police emerged from the palm trees. Korean authorities stepped out from behind the workshop. Interpol agents blocked the beach exits. Seon-woo had planned this for months, building an airtight case, coordinating with international law enforcement, gathering evidence from whistleblowers Park had thought were loyal. Nalaya's testimony and the prototype were simply the final, irrefutable proof. Park Dong-hyun, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, corporate espionage and international fraud, the lead investigator announced. Park's face went ashen as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. The other board members collapsed under the weight of their exposure. One began confessing immediately, desperate for leniency, naming names and revealing decades of corruption. The people who'd killed her father, Seon-woo's brother, and tried to kill them both, finally brought to justice. A week later, they stood together at an international press conference. Cameras flashed like stars as they unveiled Project Tidebreaker to the world. Her father and his brother were posthumously honoured, their brilliance finally recognised, their sacrifice given meaning. The technology would change everything: clean energy accessible to developing nations, a future free from fossil fuel dependence, exactly what 2 dreamers had imagined 20 years ago. Seon-woo stood beside Nalaya throughout, his hand never leaving hers. The ice serpent of Seoul had melted completely. In his place stood a man fighting for something bigger than revenge, fighting for justice, for truth, for the woman he loved. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras captured their intertwined fingers, the way they looked at each other, the love visible even through professional composure. We did it, Nalaya whispered during a brief pause. We did, Seon-woo agreed, bringing her hand to his lips. Together. They'd finished what their fathers started. Justice had triumphed over corruption. Truth had emerged from decades of lies. Love had bloomed in the ashes of tragedy. But more than completing a mission or winning a war, they'd found each other. 2 broken people who'd become whole by refusing to face darkness alone. Her father's final words echoed in her heart: change the world, love fearlessly, live free. She'd done all 3. And standing beside her husband, her partner, her protector, her home, Nalaya knew this was only their beginning. 6 months later, Nalaya stood in their Lagos penthouse overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of amber and rose. They split their time now. Seoul for 3 months, Lagos for 3 months, building 2 homes instead of choosing one. Nalaya ran the Project Tidebreaker Foundation, overseeing implementation across developing nations. Her father's legacy had become her calling, and she pursued it with the fierce intelligence she'd once hidden behind silence. Seon-woo had transformed Hanil Group completely, purging corruption and redirecting the company's resources towards sustainable technology. He partnered with her foundation, their professional collaboration as seamless as their personal one. They'd renewed their vows 3 months ago, a real wedding this time, with both families present, with music and dancing and joy. No lawyers, no signatures under duress. Just 2 people choosing each other freely, wholly, eternally. Warm arms wrapped around her from behind. Seon-woo rested his chin on her shoulder, his hands settling over her growing belly. 5 months pregnant with a daughter they'd already named, Ada May, honouring both their mothers. "Coffee's ready," he murmured against her neck. "Made it just how you like it." These were the moments she treasured most. Morning coffee with her wearing his shirt. Late nights working side by side, stealing kisses between emails. His hand always finding hers in crowded conference rooms. Her laugh, finally free, no longer hidden, ringing out without fear. "You gave me back my voice," she told him, turning in his arms. "You gave me back my heart," he replied, kissing her softly. The ice serpent of soul was gone. In his place stood a man who smiled freely, who laughed with his employees, who trusted again. His transformation was so complete that long-time staff barely recognized him. "Your brother was right," Nalaya said, touching the tide-shaped birthmark on her collarbone. "I was the key." Sion-woo's hand covered hers, then moved to cup her face with infinite tenderness. "No," he corrected gently, kissing her temple. "You were the answer. To everything." They walked to the beach as sunset approached, tides rolling in with ancient rhythm. The same ocean that had taken her father now cradled their future. Their foundation would power coastal communities with the technology he'd died protecting. Sion-woo touched her belly, feeling their daughter kick, then traced the tide-shaped mark that had brought them together. In the golden hour light it seemed to glow. 2 people who'd survived assassination attempts, corporate warfare, and unimaginable loss. 2 people who'd found love in the darkest circumstances and chosen to build a life full of light. Her father had written, "Change the world, love fearlessly, live free." She'd done all 3. And standing beside her husband, her partner, her protector, her home, with their daughter growing inside her and the future stretching bright before them, Nalaya understood a profound truth. Some marks are meant to guide us home. Hers had led her to heaven, not a place, but a person who saw her, saved her, and loved her exactly as she was. If this story touched your heart, please like and subscribe for more emotional journeys. Now tell me, have you ever met someone who changed your entire life in an unexpected way? Share your story in the comments below.